After initially reporting that Torrey Craig was going to decline his option, he actually picks it up with the Chicago Bulls. We're going to talk about it all and more, but first, we got to play that intro.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. Breaking news. We got it. Torrey Craig will be picking up his last year of his contract, that option with the Chicago Bulls that will keep him in the Chicago Bulls uniform. And this was not initially expected. We heard out just late last week that Torrey Craig was actually planning on declining his option to be with the Chicago Bulls and going to pursue kind of a bigger contract somewhere else, maybe even go to a contender. Well, it seems like that's not on the list for him. He is going to be staying with the Chicago Bulls after picking up his option. And it could very well be needed. We still don't know what's going on with Patrick Williams, considering that AK, one of the few things he sounded confident in this press conference was if Patrick Williams is going to be healthy by training camp, having Matthias Vucevic, who we just drafted, who's probably going to be the 3, but having Torrey Craig there as a veteran option at the 4, and maybe Julian Phillips, maybe players that start there for us at the beginning of the season. So with Torrey Craig, you get a veteran option there who, albeit played okay for the Chicago Bulls. I felt like every time that Torrey Craig started getting in rhythm, he suffered another injury, and that kind of kept him from being that. I know he wasn't really what a lot of Bulls fans had hoped he was going to be coming to the Chicago Bulls, but this is a solid veteran option. Nothing great, right? We understand that. But Torrey Craig is somebody who understands his role. And if you're going younger and able to have that type of veteran around, I've talked about how like even a Harrison Barnes in that type of trade could have been a good veteran to have around the Chicago Bulls. Torrey Craig is staying, so he's going to be a veteran there. Now, that does not mean that the Bulls, now that he is picking up his option, can't look to move on from him if they want to continue going younger. But I look at Torrey Craig. It's not like his contract is going to kill the Bulls in any stretch of the imagination. So it could be beneficial for the Bulls to keep him around, if they decide to do that. But this adds some more flexibility. If the Bulls are looking to move on from other contracts, he can be included in any deal. His contract's only $2.8 million for next season, so it's not huge by any stretch of the imagination. So it provides the Bulls flexibility. If they need the veteran depth there, he's going to be there. If they do look to move on from him, they can do that as well. And don't be surprised that even if Torrey Craig starts off with the Chicago Bulls, he could end up being a trade deadline move for teams that are looking to add some veteran depth at the trade deadline. So those are the options there for the Chicago Bulls. It is what it is. I know a lot of people hope that it was going to be all just young players next season. And you always want some veterans around. And we'll see if that ends up staying around for the Chicago Bulls and how long he ends up staying. So, but it is what it is. Torrey Craig is a veteran. It is what it is. That's it. Camille's in here. She says that Torrey Craig plus Javon Carter all-star season, trade him. I mean, you could definitely around the trade deadline move at least Torrey Craig. He's probably going to have more value than Javon Carter, the ball-headed hoe, but you never know, right? And I've said before, even with my disgust for Javon Carter, there have absolutely been players before who struggle their first year with the team, maybe adapt a little bit better and play in the second year. I'm not expecting that. Javon Carter is who it is, and it's not as simple as dumping him. You can't just dump him. He has a guaranteed contract. You can't just dump Javon Carter. Unfortunately, that's not realistic. This isn't 2K. We got Vaughn in the building. He says, man, I'm ready for PG to make his decision so teams can flock to Levine. Well, he already did make his decision. Well, as far as declining his option, he won't be able to sign with another team until Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Chicago time at the earliest. So don't even worry about it. We got about exactly 24 hours before we know what's going on with Paul George. But we'll see. Let's see. Mando fan says, I actually like how our offseason is going so far. Finally feels like we're going young. Completely agree with you there, brother. Completely agree with you. Devontae in the building says, I cringe every time I see Torrey Craig in the game, bro. He play like a football player. I don't agree with that. Torrey Craig is somebody who understands how to operate in space. When you watch the Bulls, like while he's not the fastest player, when they do get out in transition, he understands how to move so that the defense can't pack in the lane. And he can hit a three-point shot openly, so you got to respect that three-point shot. I don't think he plays with a football at all. He does play a more physical style as far as trying to get to the paint on the offensive side of the ball, but like I said, it's not terrible. He's not somebody that I look at and say he's going to negatively impact the play of the Chicago Bulls. I just don't look at it that way personally. Everybody's inclined to their own feelings on that, and I don't want to act like everybody has to view it one way because you don't. But it is what it is there. Let's see what else we got. McGee says we need some vets too. Completely agree with you. You want some vets, and Torrey Craig is the type of vet that you do want around, right? It's because he doesn't have a high contract. He understands how to play his role. He's not going to be somebody you got to run a lot of offense for or shots for. So he's not going to take away from shots that you're trying to get for your younger players. He's a role player, and he understands it, and he's done that over the course of his whole career. So, I like Torrey Craig in that sense a lot. Vaughn says, if the Kings are all for cutting money, I like trading him to the Kings for Barnes in a couple of seconds. You're not going to get a couple of seconds for trading Torrey Craig. I can tell you that right now. You're not getting a couple of seconds, and his contract is so low. You're not going to match Barnes on that either. You can't get that from Barnes. So, that's what it comes down to. I agree with this, JPEG. Torrey Craig is a good trade sweetener for us. Absolutely. Absolutely. Will the Bulls keep Javonte Green? That is a great question, and I wish I had an answer for you on that. I think it comes down to what else happens on the roster. I do think there's a chance that he leaves, but we'll see. We'll see. Hope he stays healthy this season. Javonte Green, definitely hope he stays healthy. Definitely. Matthew, would you like if we got Westbrook to come off the bench? Well, Westbrook picked up his option. He's not a free agent, so that's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. I'm trolling. He's not a negative impact. He's a great transition guy and role player, and he does have a lot of dirty work. The cringe comes sometimes in transition 3-pointers. Agree with that. I don't disagree with you on that one. I wants to be there. He wants to be there. You're talking about Javonte Green? Yeah, well, Javonte Green, his home is in Chicago. Even his offseason home is in Chicago. You guys got to keep in mind, when the Bulls were doing like their baseball thing and stuff last year, even when he wasn't signed to the team, he was there. And so he took the contract for Golden State to rehab in the G League. And I think it was one of those things that he kind of understood what was needed. But, it is what it is when it comes down to it. CF Football Candy says, thought on Bobby Marks' comment, I don't get how Acme still have a job. We need what the billboard didn't do shit before. So what's the billboard going to do? I'll tell you right now, like I know me and you have disagreed a lot about this, but nothing that the fans did is why we got changed. Nothing. Not going to games, not that stupid billboard. It did nothing. It took for John Paxson to go to ownership and say, hey, I can't do this anymore, for the Bulls ownership to move on. That just is what it is. That's history. That they said it. And then even then, they wanted the new front office to keep Jim Paxson or not Paxson, Boylan around. Like, so we got to be real with this, bro. We got to be real with this. Facts, you need vets, and that's why I think people that want to start Sanogo next season are going to be really disappointed when they don't completely go tank mode. They will take a step back. That's all. Agreed. They're not going full tank, and I think people confuse rebuilding with tanking. Those are very different things. You can rebuild without tanking. And so, and even then, I still think we're just going through a heavy retooling. I don't think we're fully rebuilding in a way, right? I think if you lose 2 of the core 3, you can call that a rebuild, but that's not tanking. They're still trying to put out a team that could win some games, but that naturally is going to probably have a ceiling of like 30 games, right? But you're still going to compete. We're not, when I think of teams tanking, I think that, hey, we're just taking bad contracts back. We're not going to have any good players on this team. It's going to be terrible basketball to watch. I don't think that that's necessarily what the Bulls are doing. So, but like CF Football Candy, let me know what Bobby Marks said. The Bulls team is the diarrhea of shit shows. Reinsdorf doesn't get a dime for me. He killed 2 of my teams. Listen, there's teams that are operated a lot worse than the Chicago Bulls. We're just Bulls fans, and we see it day in and day out. There are a lot of teams that operate extremely worse than the Chicago Bulls, period. I think no matter what, they need to keep their top 10 pick next year, and that's the rebuilding to me, no matter what they're saying to the media. Well, that's a rebuilding or a major retool, right? Because if you're eventually going younger and you're changing out all your pieces, whether you change them all out at once, but that's not tanking. That's all I mean, is that it's a difference between rebuilding and tanking. And I think that a lot of fans, the way they communicate rebuilding, they think, oh, we're just going to be bad. Let's go out and sign James Wiseman. We might as well. We're tanking anyway. And it's like, that's not what the Bulls are doing here. That's not what they're doing. Could you see a sign-in trade for PG? I don't, only because a double sign-in trade is really difficult to make work, because you got to keep in mind, for sign-in trades, and when you're doing that, if you're trying, only half of the base level compensation counts towards the deal. That's really difficult to do. Really difficult to do. In an ideal world, we get rid of Vooch. What center would you go for? Well, it depends on what you get back for Vooch. Like, it's not as simple as we're just trading Vooch away and coming back with nothing. I think that's why you're seeing more than likely Vooch is going to be on this roster. I'm going to tell you guys right there. I'm putting it right now at an 85% chance that Nikola Vucevic is still the starting center for the Chicago Bulls next season. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Vooch is not as terrible as what some of you guys make him out to be. Playing with DeMar DeRozan has definitely affected where he likes to get his offense, but it's not as bad. He's still a double-double, bad defensively, but he's still somebody also who can pass. And if you put him in a situation where he's not operating in the same spaces as your small forward, you get a lot different when it comes to that. So we'll see. We'll see. Lonzo keeps saying he's coming back the start of the season. I get it. Lonzo says a lot. I won't believe it until I see it. Do you think Vooch for CP3 trade that CSGO brought up is a possibility if CP3 agrees to a buyout? Would you like that deal? I mean, no, because not necessarily. Like, okay, you're trading Vooch for CP3, you're buying him out, but like that doesn't do anything for the team. Like, unless they're sending you some first to take the contract off their hands. But I don't know I haven't been watching CHGO. Not even gonna lie to you, I've been way too busy with my own channels to watch I'm gonna let y'all know right now, the only other Bulls channel I've probably watched for the last week is the Shy Bulls podcast with the Cognac Boys. That's it. I just have not had time with everything else going on to really check out any other Bulls channels. So I guess the real question is that, do you think the Bulls are bad enough to keep their top 10 pick right now? And I don't know if they are. I think that they are. You got to think about it. Even with DeMar and partial season from Zach and Kobe White hitting his leap, we almost had a top 10 pick this year. We were 3 losses away from a top 10 pick. So I do think that they are bad enough to do that. So I'm not too worried about it. You get rid of and that's not to say that we're terrible. We don't have a terrible roster. But at the same time, we have a young roster that necessarily doesn't look like it fits the best. We got a rookie in Vucevic who, unless he just has a rookie of the year type season, is going to learn and go through his things. We also have players that are unproven in Julian, Dalen, who are going to get some tick now via where it looks like we're going. So it's going to be growing pains there. I think that it's not hard to keep a top 10 pick, not for the Chicago Bulls, not when you look at where we were last year. So Craig is either a great cheap vet to have or a sweetener for those considering LaVine. LaVine's contract is so high. I don't know if you're throwing in any other contract to sweeten that, because it's already hard to match a $43 million contract when you're trying to stay competitive. You got to keep that in mind. These teams that are trading for Zach LaVine are trying to stay. The point is they're trying to stay competitive. They're trying to actually contend. So because of that, they're not really trying to give up a whole bunch of pieces. That's why the Sacramento Kings creating enough space to where they are still under the luxury tax if they trade for Zach LaVine is huge for a team like that. So I don't know if you're getting some of that adding something like that in. On the whole ownership issue, I don't know what your timeline is, but if you are free Haize, I would absolutely love to have a conversation regarding fan involvement and overall. No, I don't need to have it, because I know I've been a member of this fan base for 37 years. I'm not saying that fans don't have an impact. I'm telling you that the Chicago Bulls specifically, I don't care what you're talking about, what their motto is or anything like that. The fact of the matter is that Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't care. And you're not ever going to get Jerry Reinsdorf to care. That's why having a front office that prioritizes winning over anything. You know why the Bulls are able to build a dynasty? Not just because of getting MJ, but because Jerry Krause was willing to be hated if it meant that the team win. You know why Jim Paxson was able to build a team that would have been a championship contender had Derrick Rose's knees not stand down? It's not because the ownership was all of a sudden different, but it's because he built organically through the draft. And by the time he got his superstar, he had a bunch of role players that were ready to support that superstar. And then we went off to the stratosphere. Now, he had to go out and get Carlos Boozer and things like that, but he drafted well. And even when that thing started going down, the Bulls fell out of top 10 in attendance one time, and nothing changed there. They didn't all of a sudden start going to winning. They didn't all of a sudden start tanking. They didn't all of a sudden start prioritizing anything different. Fans were just upset, and they felt like they did something. I don't need to have a conversation because I know this fan base. This is the only team I've ever rooted for in my 37 years on this planet. I've watched it intensely. So I don't need to have a conversation. Then not that I won't have a conversation with you, but it doesn't change anything. Thinking that fans being upset, picketing, rioting, all of it would take 5+ years of being out of the top 10 of attendance before that even matters. And then on top of that, this is how well I know my organization. The Bulls give away a lot of tickets. Those sold out crowds that the Bulls talk about, a lot of those tickets are given away because the Bulls have one of the largest stadiums in all of the NBA. So again, Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't care. And for somebody, look at the people who are still in this organization. Doug Collins is still getting paid. Jim Paxson's still getting paid, still on the staff. I know this organization, so I don't need to have that conversation. We can run through it any and every day. Like, this is literally what I've spent. I didn't become a Bulls fan because I decided to podcast about them. I made a Bulls podcast because literally I have these conversations and look into the shit every day for about 25 years, basically since I was 12 years old. Don't need to have that conversation. Reginald Short, is Phillips a power forward or a small forward? Both. Modern NBA, most power forwards can play small forward and vice versa. I think until Julian Phillips kind of rounds out and adds to his body, that's when things are going to start changing. And that may be when you look at him being maybe one position over the other. Why would Craig come back? For stability, I think. I think maybe Torrey Craig and his agent initially thought, hey, we can go out here and get a deal, which I thought that they would too, for the credit. But then I think that maybe they surveyed what the market was looking like and maybe thought, hey, we're not really going to get much more than what we have for this, and we have a role here. So, yeah, Craig's contract is $2.8 million. $2.8 million. I like the youth movement. If OKC can be great, so can what? Seize, bro. Seize. So can we in due time. Everybody uses the OKC Thunder. I think people forget that the OKC Thunder traded 3 superstars and was able to recoup so many picks because of the superstars they traded. The OKC method of rebuilding isn't as easy as just, oh, let's do what OKC did. They traded Russ. They traded KD. They then got Paul George. They traded Paul George, right? They got Chris Paul, traded Chris Paul, I believe. They were able to maximize on what they had because they sold at the right time. That's it. I'm having a hard time finding teams the Bulls would even want to do a sign and trade with involving DeMar. For example, the Clippers barely have picks or young players. What do you think? Well, that's why I've been saying typically in sign and trades, you don't get a lot back. You're just looking to get something back. So the Bulls, I think if you go and look, somebody check me, the Bulls are the only team to give up a top 10 first round pick in like the last 10 years in a sign and trade. Typically when a team sign and trades a player, you're like, all right, well, thank you. You helped us give them a little bit more money. We'll give you a second. We'll give you 2 seconds to do that. So teams have that. The Clippers have, I believe, 2 second-round picks every year for the next 2 years. So theoretically, they can give that. The Bulls aren't going to get a whole lot back for DeMar DeRozan in the sign trade. So anybody holding out hope that the Bulls are going to get like this great deal back in the signing trade for DeMar DeRozan, it's not happening. I want to be real with you on that. It's not happening. You're probably getting filler. I think we talked about it. Maybe a man back from the Clippers and maybe a second-round pick or more. That's it. That's all you're getting in that case. You're not getting a whole lot back. I've been watching all NBA news because I think Levine will be traded. DeRozan will let walk and Vooch will stay. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, if the Bulls have their way, that's what it seems like they're trying to do. But we'll see. We'll see. What are the odds that we can fully tank for Flag at 1? I mean, listen, it is what it is. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see what comes down with that. But it's not just about Flag. Like, don't get me wrong. Flag is a great talent. But that draft is deep, bro. Like, that's why I say even if the Bulls stay anywhere in the top 10, you can get a franchise-changing talent, period. You don't have to, it doesn't have to just be Flag. Now, I would love for it to be Flag, but it doesn't just have to be Flag. Hey, our reporters didn't challenge Acme's stance on picks. I don't know why he doesn't value draft capital at all. I just hope if enough people bring it to his attention changes at this point. You won't, because, again, I've talked about it. No, and they said it. No team was offering picks in the 2025 draft. Josh Giddey, I hate to tell you guys, was better. The only difference is that we've seen Josh Giddey in the playoffs, and we have a bad taste in our mouth about that. Josh Giddey is better than almost any other player that you would have gotten realistically where the Bulls would have picked at. He just is. So I don't think that AK didn't value draft capital. I think he just looked at it and said, Giddey's better than that. This is a guy who's averaged 17, 6, and 6. He's better than that. We know what he's bringing here, and he's still only 21 years old, still younger than a lot of the players in this draft. That's my thought process. ESPN analysts say DeMar isn't getting any offer over to $18 million, which is around what he was offered 3 years ago. I mean, I'm not surprised at that. He's 3 years older. And unfortunately, like DeMar can ball. Make no mistake about it. And this is why I always say, even in my criticisms of DeMar DeRozan, I like to make sure that everybody knows that I am saying that DeMar DeRozan balls out. But, whoa, that's a pause moment. He plays great. But at the end of the day, he's going to start declining. And teams are going to look at that. And teams are going to look at what DeMar DeRozan, what's the realistic, like, yeah, DeMar can help us right now. We've seen it. And if he can be your 2 or your 3, not on position, but as far as your hierarchy, you got a damn good player there. But it's not somebody that you're breaking the bank for. So, Haize, did you already talk about PG-13 opting out of his contract? Might open some trade options for Zach. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Even the center from Duke is very good. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I get it. I understand why everybody's so focused on Cooper Flagg. No, I'm not saying don't focus on Cooper Flagg. Ideally, you want Cooper Flagg in next year's draft. Ace Bailey is still a really good prospect. Don't overlook it. The point guard out of Baylor, really good. But again, we don't really need a point guard, so take that for what you will. What's the center's name? Kaman Malish. I know I probably murdered his name. That dude. If the Bulls need a center, and if Josh Giddey, Kobe White look like they show some promise, Vucevic shows some promise, getting that center from Duke he's 17 years old right now. He'll be 18, of course, before the season starts. But that dude can ball. So, yeah, it's a lot of talent in this draft. Bar Mark says the Bulls won't be able to trade Zach even if they attach a first-round pick to the deal. Do you agree with that? I mean, all it takes is, we've seen it. All it takes is one team to get desperate. Hell, they thought they couldn't trade Russ at one point. He was traded, right? So all it takes is that one team to see him. Now, I will say this, if it's that bad, it may not happen until the trade deadline. But if the Bulls want to move Zach, they can move Zach. We'll see. That's who I want, the center from Duke. The center from Duke is nasty. He's nasty. So yeah, it would be a great prospect for the Chicago Bulls there, man. But all right, y'all, we're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap it up. I love you guys so much, man. Thank you for tuning in. You guys already know what it is. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. In exchange for that, I'll be bringing you the best Chicago Bulls content you can find on all of YouTube. We go live every time, especially during the offseason. When news drops, we drop. So you guys can stay tuned in for that, man. I appreciate you guys so much. Make sure you guys are following the channel at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, which happens tomorrow, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. That's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.